Hello, beautiful souls. I am Valeria Maritza here at Healing Through You. I am an infinite being of light, and so are you. My guest today is Kayse Gehret. She is one of the most highly regarded, sought after guides for the medicine of the moment, which is microdosing earth medicine. I am so excited to bring her over because I am so curious about microdosing, what this is. I have not had a podcast on this subject before. So let's just welcome her in. So welcome, Kayse.
Hi, great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. Kayse, let's just get straight down to the meat of it.
Please.
Um, Tell us a little bit about where you were and what you went through that before you found microdosing as one of the healing modalities that actually got you out of what you were experiencing.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm probably one of the least likely people in the world to be working with magic mushrooms today. I'll start with that. And this is true for a lot of the people I wind up working with too. So, growing up, I wanted to be a doctor. I was always interested in health and healing. And when I was a teenager, I developed a grand mal seizure disorder.
Oh,
So my brain was very just kind of fritzing out on its own accord. And so I was very careful with it and did not experiment with drugs like most teenagers or young adults because I was always kind of afraid to destabilize my already very sensitive nervous system. However, I went into the healing arts. I became a body worker and a massage therapist for many years. I studied lots and lots of different modalities, energy work, hypnotherapy, eventually opened up healing art studios. And somewhere along the line, I came and met someone who introduced me to the idea of microdosing, which was working with mushrooms, but at a teeny tiny subperceptual dose where I wasn't tripping, I wasn't having a psychedelic journey, but I was getting the benefits of working with mushrooms at a subperceptual level. So that I was like, I'm down with that. I'll try that. And I didn't really have expectations because I didn't really know a lot of people who were doing it at the time. And I started, and after a few months, I noticed I hadn't had a seizure. I hadn't had an aura. They stopped that day, and I've never had one since. And also, in addition to that, I've just had a lot of other mental, physical, emotional, spiritual opening and gifts come in. So during the pandemic, when my healing arts studios in California were closed, I set up two pilot groups around microdosing just so people could gather. I created a framework and a program so that people could move through the process together, kind of know what they're moving through was normal, um, having been through the experience myself alone. And fast forward 5 years later, we've had over now 1,600 people, I think, through our program and our global microdosing community. And now I'm training other guides to do this practice and support other people in microdosing practice.
amazing. You went the whole story right there.
Yes, exactly.
So I have never experimented with any type of drugs at all. And every time that any type of psychedelics come through, it like always scares me a little bit. And it's like, okay, what is that? I hear a lot about ayahuasca and like huge openings or huge experiences. And I know that for experiences like that, you really do need someone there to guide you through and support you. So tell me a little bit about the difference between like going all out or like just doing mushrooms or just doing microdosing for the benefits of getting healed.
Fantastic question. Fantastic. And this is so resonant with so many people that come to practice. This
Hmm.
is the number one question. And so we have, for whatever reason, in modern times, like since the 60s, focused on the high dose experience.
Hmm.
Ever since those of us, the generations alive on the planet and the war on drugs, all of
Yeah.
it got looped into the high dose experiences, high dose mushroom experiences, high dose LSD experiences. This is so different. And one of the analogies I use often is for people who are starting a meditation practice, right? If you're
Hmm.
interested to start a contemplative practice and you look and you go, oh, there's a 10-day Vipassana retreat. that I'm going to go on. If you've never meditated in your life and you try to jump straight to a 10-day silent retreat, that experience is going to rock your world. It's going to be really difficult, challenging, painful, and it's very hard to go from A to Z, right? Microdosing is more like starting a daily meditation practice where you're sitting on the cushion, maybe you're setting aside just 10 minutes a day at first, and disciplining yourself to sit on the cushion once a day, every day for 10 minutes for the next 6 months, and then go do your retreat, right? You're going to have a
Hmm.
very different experience if you kind of prepare your physical body, prepare your emotional body, connect with the medicine in small daily increments and achieve the same results that you would from a big experience, but it'll be far more gentle, far more subtle, far more easy and easeful to integrate into your day-to-day life.
Yeah, we live in a society where everybody wants results now, right? It's like you just want to jump in and do it all. Oh, it didn't work for me. Next, right? So you just mentioned getting into a practice, doing the microdosing for maybe like 6 months and then going for the retreat. What kind of benefits can we expect to see in the beginning so that we're not deterred from like, okay, that didn't work, it didn't do anything for me, next, and then not really giving it like a full um, opportunity to see that it's actually helping you.
Yes, great question. And that's where working with medicines, especially with natural medicines like mushroom medicine, it's very different than, say, a pharmaceutical drug experience
Hmm.
where it's on off, where the drug is kind of doing something to you. Mushrooms are really relational. So it's you and your unique spirit working with the plant or the mushroom to, over time, connect and accrue these benefits. And the big difference is once you stop working with them, you get to keep them, right?
Mm.
It's not all of the gifts and benefits and healing that come through once you stop the mushroom practice, you they don't come back, which is very different than the mechanism of our conditioning of our pharmaceutical world, right? So giving it time, giving your body time to connect with the medicine and understanding each person's path is very unique. So some people start and within the first day or two, they have tremendous benefit. They're like, I'm thinking more clearly, I'm uplifted, I'm really calm, I have less anxiety, I am not procrastinating anymore. I'm just more easy to, I can just do the things that I've been reluctant to do and putting off. Other people, it takes a few days or weeks to connect with the medicine. Sometimes emotion comes up, sometimes fatigue. It's sometimes like a detox reaction can happen where you need to cleanse and clear some denser, heavier emotions before you can move into a state of expansion and the gifts come in. That was very, very much my experience. I had had quite a bit of grief in this particular lifetime stored in the body that therapy could never quite touch, right? We can talk about experiences in our lives, but when we have grief or we have trauma or loss, lots of times it's in our body and it kind of goes beyond the mind. Mushrooms are really beautiful medicine for working at that level with people. So oftentimes when people work with mushrooms, they have some deeper layers of fear, grief, fatigue come up in the coming weeks. And then once those clear and pass, that's when the gifts can come in, the gifts of intuition and creativity, connection, epiphanies, things become very clear. We can be really connected to ourselves in a new way. So it's a beautiful process and it's also very unique.
How would someone know that they're experiencing something that they need to release once beginning this, and that they're not there yet? Is this something that they receive support with?
Yes, that's one of the primary reasons of having a guide,
Uh-huh.
to be honest, because a lot of guides will say, I'm a guide today because I want to provide to people what I didn't have along
Hmm.
my path. So yes, it was when I started, it was such an interesting experience to have like my seizures heal. And also I used to be very prone to headaches. Like I used to
Hmm.
get headaches very, very regularly as a response to stress and anxiety. I have had maybe one or two headaches since in many, many, many years. And so while that was happening, I was also shedding a lot of grief, just a lot of tears where there was nothing really sad present day in life, but I knew it was just old. It was old. It was stored in the body and it was a catharsis. So when you're moving through the process, it's really nice to have a guide, microdosing coach, or a community to reflect and share as you're moving through those things. Because I always remind people we're feeling things because it's on the way out.
Mm,
Which is exactly what we want. So we live in a culture that equates numbness with healing.
yes.
Right. And so for people to understand that actually having enhanced ability to actually feel with more texture and more nuance is actually what healing really looks like.
I can imagine someone who's suppressed their emotions and their feelings their entire life, and now they might want to start trying the microdosing and then just feeling grief and crying and feeling all that sorrow. Um, and then just closing back up. And we're like, I don't have time for that because that's been the programming for so many years. How would somebody like that be helped through the process so that they can actually allow themselves to feel because it's so new for them?
Beautiful question. This just literally came up yesterday. We had one of our community calls yesterday, and someone was saying, had been in the community for some time and been through several portals
Hmm.
because that's how healing works, right? There's
Hmm.
always more.
Yes.
We're never
I call it
done.
the onion, the peeling onion.
We just go deeper,
Hmm.
deeper and deeper. And each time, as we kind of build that muscle, we understand that even though it's difficult to go through certain portals, especially when we're feeling grief or sorrow or heaviness, you come to realize that there's enormous gifts right on the other side of that. So it's always well worth it. And one of the members on our community yesterday was saying that what was really helpful for them to be in a place where we normalize that, right?
Mm,
Grief is really uncomfortable in our society to hold. It's like if you see someone
yes.
crying or someone upset in grief, there's very few people who step into it and can sit with that person and just hold sacred silence and be with it. Most people are trained to run away, right? It's very uncomfortable.
Avoid. Yes.
Yes, yeah. And just being in a community or having a guide or a companion, some kind of support that can just be with you in it without fixing or doing anything, just kind of letting the process unfold is really, really deeply healing. So mushrooms are really uniquely great at, if you think of their role they play in the forest, right? They
Hmm.
remediate, they go straight to the thing, they go straight to the old, the decaying, that's ready to make space and create space for new growth in the forest. That's exactly the way it works with us too.
I remember someone mentioning mushrooms to me for the first time about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, and I was so green to this. And I was like, oh, let me research this. So I started looking at mushrooms on the internet, and I'm getting all kinds of edible, regular, food ones. And I'm like, what are they talking about? How would somebody go around finding this and knowing exactly what it is that they're looking for so that they're not just getting anything or that they're not getting anything that's tainted or, not safe.
Yes. I mean, that was a big inspiration for our community, to be
Mm,
honest, because I've been doing small group programs since 2020.
hmm.
And what we found about a year and a half ago was 5 years ago, the problem was there wasn't any information
Yeah.
out there. It was really hard to
Uh-huh.
find anything. Now that's the opposite problem of too much information,
Hmm.
right? You go on and you Google microdosing mushrooms, you're just going to get inundated, right? With supplements and product companies and all
Yes.
kinds of information. And you're like, how do I know what to trust, what's
Hmm.
real? And so our community was largely inspired to give people a really accessible way to just come and dip your toe in, meet guides, meet people in the work, meet participants who've been practicing now for 4 or 5 years, some of
Hmm.
them. And so you can really like listen to real people and get real information, sharing their story, sharing their experience. And so even if you're not ready to start, it's a great place just to learn, connect with other people, and get like real practical information that you can't find on the interwebs, right?
Oh, I love that. So kind of like immerse yourself in the information and kind of like see what people are doing, how they're feeling, what they're saying, what they're sharing, and then feel into it like, okay, maybe that's still not something for me, or maybe I'd like to try, or maybe I just stay here for a little bit longer and just see what happens. I love that space that you're providing. Amazing. Um, what about does is this something that will show up like on your blood test, or like is this something that would interfere, like if somebody's getting a job and they need to go through the famous drug test, like how does that work?
Great question. So, when I first started 4 or 5 years ago, psilocybin wasn't even tested. Like, it wasn't one of the drugs people look for on a
Hmm.
drug test. So, there wasn't much cause for concern with it at the time. Now it's much more in the public consciousness, right? And
Hmm.
so there was just it was just in the news the other day that they're beginning to test for it. I think in the Department of Defense or some government agency was going to start testing. So that's a big change and difference. The most important thing people should know is psilocybin clears from the body very rapidly. So if you are, say, having a surgery coming up, or you're just not sure, you might have to do anesthesia and you're just not sure and you want to you're not sure, you might be tested. It takes 13 to 15 hours is what the scientists and pharmacists have counseled me to completely clear from the body. It's very different than, say, cannabis that can stay in your hair and nails
Hmm.
for many, many months beyond. Psilocybin clears from the body at any dose and any amount quite readily. So I always share with people, I do work with people who work for the government and they do receive drug testing once in a while just to be on the safe side. They'll pause their microdosing for 2 or 3 days before just to be safe.
Amazing. That's really great information. And I love that you said in any dosage. Like what?
Yes.
Seriously? Wow. Um, okay, so we talked a lot about like the things that were like coming up for me, like okay, what about this? What about that? Like, what about would it change or would it make somebody feel like they're not in control of what's going on, or have hallucinations, or be impaired for like taking care of their families, or driving, or anything like that?
Great question. So we tend to, I'm sure you've experienced this, like attracts like. And so I attracted a lot of clients at the outset that were kind of like me, right? Who
Uh-huh,
were
uh-huh.
very cautious spirits,
Yes.
very responsible, like to take our time, learn all the things before we dip our toe in. I'm
Mhm.
I'm that way with everything.
Yeah.
And so I was that way with microdosing as well. So I have a lot of clients who they're the kind of people who a year ago they're like, I never thought that I would be doing this, but here
Hmm.
I am, right? In spite of myself. I have people who are they want to learn a lot, do all the research, and feel very confident when they do start that they've kind of gotten everything. So that's I that those are my people. So that's it. I also work with people who they're like, I have young kids, I hold a lot of responsibility at work. I drive in traffic a lot. I can't be altered. I can't be
Hmm.
off my game. I need to have my act together all the time,
Yeah.
right? I hear that from a lot of clients. That's why one of the reasons I love microdosing is you're not going to feel. You're not going to feel trippy. You're not going to feel altered. If you do, that means your dose is too high.
Hmm.
And that's probably if you're working with a guide who's experienced, that's not going to happen because they're going to help you choose a dose that's probably on the lower side and work your way up. Very quickly, the vast majority of people I have, especially the people who are most concerned about that, they laugh now at themselves at the beginning because they were so concerned
Yeah.
about feeling out of
That's how I
control or
would be.
feeling stoned or feeling trippy. And then they start and they're like, wow, not only am I not out of it, I'm better in every way.
Mm,
Not out of
I
it.
love
I'm
that.
more focused, I'm more dialed in, I'm more articulate. I have better anticipation. I have better reflexes. I kind of know things are going to happen or things are going to be said before they said. So across the spectrum of life, like in business, people are like, I'm just a better negotiator. In meetings, I know how to run a meeting. I know how it's going to flow. I can read people's needs better. I can anticipate things better. Parents are like, I'm just more connected to my children. And so it's less of a mental battle and more of a feeling and sensing what their needs are, kind of creating the space to create flow and harmony in the household rather than kind of mental and muscle my way through relational situations in life and family structures. And so it's really interesting and it happens very quickly. And so I find people get very confident once you experience how the medicine actually works with you and you're better at most things and you're
Mhm.
clearer in most things. People get very confident to sometimes explore the medicine at a deeper level.
So you mentioned that after people stop using this, that all the benefits remain. So it's not like going to the gym and working up your muscles and then you stop going and then you lose all that muscle. It's like it just continues staying.
That's a great analogy. Yes. I mean, a lot of people continue on, but they continue on with the medicine throughout their life because they're always growing.
Hmm.
Right, that's
Hmm.
the beauty of it. I have a lot of people that started with me 4 or 5 years ago, and they originally, when they came, they wanted to have less headaches, or
Mm.
they were depressed, or they were leaning on alcohol a little too much, and they wanted to let go of alcohol. Now, a few years later, all of those things have been achieved, right? And their life is in a very different place. Now they're working on their spiritual development
Mm.
or their connection to their angels or their relationships or the anxiety they're feeling with the world that they didn't have 5 years ago. So you grow and evolve over time. And a lot of people, it's much more of a relationship with a friend. Like we all have those friends that we can go years without seeing.
Hmm.
When you see them, it's like you open the door and it's like you pick up where you left off
Yes.
5 years ago, right?
Okay.
That's how the relationship with the medicine gets, where you will you'll still really feel connected to the medicine when you stop and you take a break, and then your intuition will call you back like when it's time to visit them and be
Oh, I
with
love
them
that.
more intimately again. You'll know and come back. Like right now, just in the last 2 weeks, we have a lot of people that I worked with 2 years ago are being summoned back to practice. It's really interesting how it happens. And so I've been reconnecting and kind of reorienting people's practice with a new set of intentions
Hmm.
now that they're in such a different experience of life than when I first met them 2 years ago. Really beautiful.
I love that. Is there anyone who should not use
Hmm.
this?
Great question. It's actually a very small segment of the population, I think. I've worked with people from 19 to 91 in our community, and we actually have a lot of times people ask me if children and teenagers can microdose. Yes. Typically, I don't work with children specifically, but I work with a lot of parents. And then the parents, once they feel really solid and confident in their own practice, have supported their children and teens with microdosing practice. Um, I would say if I have to look across all the people that I've ever worked with, the people who aren't ready for mushroom practice is people who are going through something where they're in such a raw state of emotionality,
Mm.
right? That they're in the midst of a loss. Like they're in the throes of a divorce, like really raw and a peak emotional state. And so I'll often ask them, like, if you could imagine any length of time where you actually feel more than you're feeling right now, if they tell me no way, there's absolutely no way, that's probably not the time for them to start working with mushrooms. It's not that they can't, is we would start with other lifestyle practices and maybe a different medicine to start with just to get them into a place where they were stabilized emotionally and then move into mushroom work later. Mushrooms are a non-specific amplifier, so they tend to bring things up and out,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so if life has already kind of taken you to your knees where you are, it's not necessarily the right timing for that medicine. And people that are very, very uncomfortable with feeling too, I would
Okay.
say are also struggle a little bit more. Most people who come to this practice, even if they don't know it or they can't articulate it, there's something in their spirit that's they're ready, that
Yes.
they're ready for it. And so it doesn't happen that often, but sometimes people are kind of taken aback if they have largely numbed themselves through life, through
Yeah.
workaholism, go, 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 go,
Hmm.
being busy all the time, being distracted all the time, using a lot of medications to numb and manage their and cope with their symptoms. sometimes they're taken aback by how healing actually works, which is sometimes if we're really out of alignment in our life, sometimes we have to be destabilized,
Yes.
right? Before we can
Yes.
drop into a new and fresh alignment. So that's why I think at the outset, having a guide and education around this is completely normal.
Hmm. Hmm.
If it looks a little messy, that's exactly as nature intended it, right? All
Yeah.
growth is never linear. It's always a little bit wild. It's always a little bit out of our mental control. And so it makes a big difference if you walk into it knowing that that's part of the healing road.
Yeah, it's always good to have that heads up instead of going through it like not knowing what's happening. Oh,
Yes.
okay, that could happen.
Yes.
Would this interfere with any medicines that people might be taking? And is this something that, well, I guess it's two questions. If they brought it up to the doctor, would the doctor be like, if they, obviously if they don't know anything about it, be like, no, don't touch that.
Great questions, great questions. And it's so beautiful this question right now because there's so much more available than
Hmm.
just a few years ago. So
Yes.
my friend and colleague Kristen Spear developed this very innovative tool. It's at psychedelicinteraction.com. It's a tracking tool so that you can enter in from the comfort of home. You just put in any of your medications or your supplements that you're on, and then within seconds you get a cross-checked with psilocybin mushrooms if it interacts and how it interacts with your medications.
Hmm.
It's brilliant. And so prior to that tool, we have pharmacists who work alongside our programs and courses that for people on medications, they could do a consultation. Still available if you want more, especially for people who are interested in tapering off their pharmaceutical
Hmm.
medications very frequently. They want to come to natural medicines to help them taper off
Hmm.
and not have such extreme withdrawal and side effect symptoms. So those are both available, whether you consult with a pharmacist in the space who's experienced with Western pharmacy and psilocybin medicine, or this tracking tool is really great if you're more of a DIY type person.
Uh-huh.
You could do it at home and know how the mushrooms are going to interact with other medications you're on. The biggest things I have seen real world is there's certain medications that blunt the effect of mushrooms.
Mm.
So we have learned that some people, when you're um, creating a protocol or supporting people with their dosing, you'll know from certain medications will blunt the mushrooms. You might have to work at a higher level depending on which medications you're on.
Awesome. I had a question.
Go for it.
Now it went away. This happens to me all the time. What was the question?
I work with a lot of women in perimenopause, menopause,
Uh-huh.
and it just yeah, they're like it'll come back 2 hours from now. I
Okay.
get it.
So, I'm interested in knowing learning more about the seizures that you're having.
Hmm.
And then because you mentioned that you tried different things, but you were still having them or still managing it. Um, but they didn't stop until this. And this is something that is very interesting to me because my dog has seizures sometimes.
Oh.
And I've been working with him with like different healing modalities as well. Um, but he does still have something once in a while. So I'm interested to hear more about this, all about the seizure thing, because it's just something like, I mean, when he got diagnosed with it, they're like, yes, that's epilepsy, and it means that we don't know what makes them happen. I'm like, okay.
Exactly.
Like if you Google epilepsy, it says unknown cause. I'm like, oh, so they just gave it a name,
I share that with your dog. Yes.
right? And I'm like, okay. So, yeah, can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So zooming out a little bit, that
Hmm.
I think far and away the biggest thing of all the people I've worked with who ask like what is psilocybin really good at? It's good at working with so many things, but far and away the most is nervous system healing. far and away. So whether it's seizures or TBI, concussions, accidents, car accidents, ski accidents, headaches, migraines, cluster headaches, sometimes obsessive behaviors, right, are actually
Oh,
rooted in a
wow.
dysregulated nervous system. A lot of our addictions are actually a dysregulated nervous system. Lots of our anxieties, right? Social anxiety, driving anxiety, public speaking, meeting new people, all of these things are a dysregulated nervous system. And so when we heal with psilocybin at the root and it resets our nervous system, we clear all of these things. When my seizure stopped, I thought it was quite miraculous,
Yeah,
right?
I would
But
think so
now,
too.
now I'm like, oh, it's just, of course, because it was an underlying dysregulated nervous system. So I love it so much because a lot of people who suffer from all those things I just listed are actually very sensitive, right? The
Mhm.
flip side of having a hair trigger nervous system is you tend to be very empathic, intuitive, open-spirited. It's easier to connect to your intuition and your creativity. I work with a lot of artists, musicians, healers who are very open and they have all of these afflictions and conditions often. They're often medicated off and on throughout life because of their
Mhm.
sensitivity. And when you work with mushrooms and you reset your nervous system in a really lasting way, you get to keep all of your beautiful sensitivity and openness and intuition, creativity, but you now have a nervous system that can like move around this kind of harsh muggle world with more ease and not be derailed, like not get headaches in response anymore, not have a seizure in response anymore. So your dog, I'm guessing, is probably very sensitive.
Yes.
As soon as
That's my
you're the
baby.
slightest upset, he's
Uh-huh.
probably straight on you, right? And
Yep.
that's right. And so that's just, he's probably just really, really sensitive. I haven't specifically worked with mushrooms and animals, but definitely some of my clients have taken it upon themselves to
Uh-huh.
microdose their pets.
Yes.
And they said it's been really, really effective. One of my favorite stories was a man who started dosing his dog, and he's like, my dog was so stubborn and always wanted to go the same way in the neighborhood every day. And when he started microdosing, he wanted to go a different direction
Wow.
all of a sudden and was more open and more demonstrative. And I was like, gosh, it's just like people. It's
That's
just
so interesting.
it's just like people. So, yeah, I think what I have seen, and I've now worked with probably a dozen people now who specifically came for seizures,
Hmm.
some adults, some children. And it's really interesting what we've seen in the way people have healed. Everybody has either their seizures have ceased completely or they've way, way diminished. So people that were having like 2 or 3 seizures every week might have 2 or 3 a year now, which they consider, if you ask them, they're happy.
Oh yeah, for
They
sure.
consider that a win. And then a lot of children too, whose parents have worked with them um, on their nervous system healing. And especially in the kids, we notice an ability to, the same time the seizures have lessened and reduced, our ability to express emotion has become greatly enhanced, which
Mm.
is a very cool connection that people saw. And it was most pronounced in children. Is a lot of the parents that I worked with said, my son, it was very, he would get kind of overwhelmed by his own emotion and
Uh-huh.
he didn't really know what to do with it. And ever since he started microdosing, his seizures have diminished, but he's also much better at articulating how he's feeling and with a greater nuance and connecting to himself and expressing what his needs are in each moment. And I think those two things are connected. It's very
Hmm.
obvious. And so it allows us to metabolize excess emotion, excess energy, excess stimulus much differently. So instead of developing a migraine, we turn it into a poem or a painting or express how we're feeling.
I love that. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it works? I mean, I know you have said it works with it regulates your nervous system, but can you tell us a little bit more about like how is it actually working?
The science.
Yes, the
Yes, yes,
science.
yes. So it's really exciting right now because we know some. but I think we're going to discover we know very little. I think
As
there's
everything.
I think we're going to find it. We're going to discover amazing, amazing things that mushrooms and nature are so wise and possess so much intelligence and healing beyond what we know. So, right now, with psilocybin mushrooms specifically, we focus on the compound psilocybin converts into psilocin. Psilocin is the actual chemical that's like the magic part of the magic mushroom.
Hmm.
And so, it's shown, scientists have proven that psilocin connects with our what are we commonly known as our serotonin receptors. And so it opens up new pathways. That's why it has mood enhancing, uplifting effects, similar to an antidepressant would play on that same receptor system. It creates calm and uplift, but also creates new pathways in the brain. So it helps us grow new dendrites
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
our neurons. And so we think differently, we think more expansively, we get out of kind of that older, habituated, looping thinking and thought pattern, and we open up new ways of thinking. That's why it's really important to pair with coaching, guidance, lifestyle practices, because when we have this new window of opportunity, if we also entrain ourselves to embrace new habits and new ways of being at the same time, we have this greater expansiveness.
Hmm.
A lot can change very quickly, and this beautiful cascade effects happens. Also, they're realizing that, we focus so much on the
Yes.
brain in our culture, whereas we have even more serotonin receptors in our gut than we
Hmm.
do in our brain, and we have them throughout our body. But particularly, I think it has a large impact on our gut, which is our kind of emotional seat and brain, right? This is our thinking self, but our emotional feeling self is actually largely housed in the gut. And so that's why when people work with mushrooms, you can develop such a new, greater sense and spectrum of your feeling body, your emotional body, your intuitive body, your creative body. Lastly, I'll say with mushrooms, while we focus on psilocin, there's a beautiful entourage effect with so many other compounds in the mushrooms that are also imparting their intelligence and wisdom into the body that I think we witness and see in practice, but we cannot begin to make sense out of scientifically quite yet. I think we will over time. But I always remind people, because we just see, every single call, we're always learning something new, experiencing something new, experiencing kind of a dramatic healing of some kind. But when you think about it, like mushrooms have been on the planet for way longer than us, you
Hmm.
know, tens of thousands of years. They've lived through 5 extinction events and still thrive. And so if you think about how much wisdom and timeless intelligence they bring to us, I think we've only scratched the surface scientifically as to what these beings are capable of.
I saw on a documentary something about like if you remove a mushroom from here, the mushrooms all the way across the world on the other side feel it. Have you heard about that? Do you know
Yes, the
anything more about that?
mycelium. Yeah, the mycelium. Yeah.
How does
That's
that
so
work?
mushrooms are connected. So we think of mushrooms as like the little bit that we see,
Yes. Uh-huh.
but the mushrooms that we see are just a tip. They're kind of the fruiting body of this larger being that is the mycelial network. So it's this interconnected network that actually spans miles and miles and miles underground of the
Uh-huh.
forest floor all around the world, stretches all around the world. Some of the largest beings on the planet. And it's a communication superhighway, if you will, that connects all of the organisms in the forest together. So it's so beautiful. It's such a great teaching and lesson for us as humans at this time that we are all connected.
Yes.
Trees on the other side of the world are impacted by what is happening on the other side of the planet,
Hmm.
connected by the mushrooms.
Wow, that's lovely.
Hmm.
Um, you were talking about serotonin and the little what do you call them? The little
Receptors.
reflectors coming out. So I don't know if you're familiar, but when you do a water fast for 48 hours or more, then that same thing happens, is that you begin to do that. and be able to connect, and you get the happy hormone, right? After 48 hours of water fasting. So is this like the same exact thing? Is this different? Are you familiar with that?
Hmm. Absolutely. Yep, it's different, but similar for
Mm-hmm.
sure. So a lot of times when people are moving through the process with microdosing, if they have done a water fast or a juice cleanse
Mm-hmm.
before, they're like, ah, okay, I see what's happening because you go through this kind of uncomfortable period,
Yeah.
where you're hungry for a while and your
Uh-huh.
body's like, wait a minute, something's different's going on. Then you break through into the next phase and you feel wonderful. You
Mm-hmm.
feel uplifted and happy and joyful and wonder and light, and radiant. Yeah, that's exactly how it is. It's just, I think, a different mechanism
Mm-hmm.
of different ways of getting to the same place. Yes.
Okay, amazing. So, it can actually help people get there faster if they're not doing a water fast. And also they keep these receptors, right? They start growing, but they don't regress, right?
Yes, yes. And I think I've worked with a lot of younger people and I've worked with a lot of older people. And, it's natural. Sometimes I have to remind people, like if you're 80 plus, your brain's been around for a while, right?
Yeah.
And so our brains tend to get fixed over time,
Mm-hmm.
especially like on an intake. A lot of times I'll ask people about their lifestyle and I'm listening for habits, right? Like if are you a person that's like eating the same thing for lunch every day for the last 20 years? Right? We all have our things, like even the most free spirit among us. We're like, oh, I'm actually more routine oriented than I thought. And so our
Yeah.
brains kind of get into these grooves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of experience where we walk the same way every day, we drive the same way to work every day. We do the
Mm-hmm.
same things, we eat the same things, we experience the same
It's
things. And
the comfort of the familiarity.
yes. And so the longer we do that, it's kind of our brain and our world gets smaller and we kind of go down these same grooves. So when we start microdosing and with mushroom work, it kind of creates new canals,
Uh-huh.
if you will. So we can kind of go different directions, do different things, open new ways of experiencing the world. And then when we actually go and do them, that's the magic and the practice.
Amazing. So can microdosing help with depression?
Oh, yes.
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 There's so many
Yes.
teenagers I've seen and I've heard about, especially after COVID, that they went down this path of like, I don't want to go out, and they just, they're just in their own little space. Is this something that they could benefit from?
Yes, yes. But I will say when you're working with kids, when I work with a lot of parents, which is common right now,
Hmm.
it's very, very, what you're speaking to is epidemic at this point where people are calling and going, my kid is really struggling, mental health issues, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation sometimes, and they ask, can mushrooms help my child? Yes, and I think children are among the most sensitive beings, along with our pets and the animals in the natural world. Kids and babies are the most sensitive beings on the planet, and they are picking up the distress in society and in the planet and the climate crisis to a much higher, greater extent than adult brains
Hmm.
are and bodies. And so when we approach treating our children as if things are normal in our society, right? We're kind of making the children and their sensitivity the problem when I
Hmm.
think it's divesting us of the responsibility to create and cultivate a world that allows our children to thrive in. So in many ways, I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so when we're working with kids, really listening to them, understanding that they're feeling something that's so much greater than they might be able to be aware of and articulate. And also an understanding, when I look at the world that an 18-year-old is stepping into today versus like what my concerns were when I was 18, stepping
Hmm.
into adulthood, like it's justifiable that they might be feeling anxious or they might be feeling sad. So I try to, when I'm working with kids or supporting adults who are working with kids, kind of bring this kind of greater awareness in how we support young people at this time.
Amazing. People who are struggling with addiction or smoking or drinking or overeating or undereating, uh, all of these things can be helped by opening up the receptors.
Yes. Yes. And it happens in such a beautiful, beautiful way. I think a lot of people think and rightly worry people who have what they would call addiction themselves are like,
Hmm.
well, maybe I stopped drinking, but am I just replacing one addiction for another?
Uh-huh.
Right? And actually, mushrooms help you unravel that addictive mind,
Mm.
right? So you don't have that tendency to fixate, to obsess, to stew and ruminate. It's like that part of our brain that goes around and around and around and around doesn't, it like lets go and releases. And so it's it's the opposite effect. Like that concern is put to rest because you're not reliant on mushrooms anymore. You're only working with mushrooms until you can reset your nervous system
Hmm.
so that it's not gripping in the same way.
I love
So
that.
I've worked with a lot of addictions across the spectrum, but moreover, I've worked with a lot of people who didn't even realize they had a dependency or habits until they
Hmm.
let go of them. And so, especially when it comes to alcohol, it's been since day one in our very first programs and consistently throughout. Like, we've had so many people once they started microdosing who didn't have a quote unquote problem with alcohol. Maybe they used alcohol more than they were aware of at the time, but they just effortlessly let it go. So many people, once they start microdosing, go from drinking several times a week to once or twice a year. And some people don't drink at all anymore. I've probably had, I think, one glass of wine in the last 4 years at this point. And it's funny when you ask people about it, they like it just happens so naturally.
Hmm. Organically.
And with it's easeful and a lot of people comment when they do drink like a special occasion, oftentimes a special occasion, like it
Hmm.
was a celebration, I went to a wedding, they can't believe how much they can feel the alcohol in their system for like days afterward. They're like, I just feel so heavy and like
Yes.
so different. And it's just a different frequency that I'm used to. It's just, it brings me down. It makes me feel heavy. And they're like, oh my God, I used to put this in my body like 5 or 6 days a week, like, and function. So it's the mushrooms have brought them into a greater sense of their own energetics. And so when
Hmm.
they bring something, a person, a thing, alcohol into their field, they can feel a greater difference right away. So it's pretty remarkable from any kind of addictions, from eating disorders to OCD type behaviors, fixations of all kinds. Um, People's past. That's another big one that's really, really beautiful. Like a lot of our therapy, and sorry to go off on this topic, but I think it's so relevant right now. A lot of people who have had therapy for many, many, many years, they realize that just talking about my trauma didn't ever let me get free of it.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure. 100%.
Right. And they realize with
That's why they're
mushroom,
on therapy for years and years and years because nothing's happening. Sorry.
right. Right. And so I think with all of our kind of tendency to fix our minds on things and think it's and focus on the mind and how we heal, you realize once you develop this greater expansiveness within oneself, this greater perspective on one's life, you kind of get bigger in a way within oneself. These individual experiences become part of our story, but less dominant in our
Mm.
story. And so people can more readily find forgiveness of things that were done to them, but also things that we did to ourselves, prior versions of ourselves. And so we can move beyond and move forward and let go of a lot of these behaviors and patterns that were part of it that we call addictions, right?
Yes, like in my line of work, this would be like looking at it from the higher self point of view. Like not from the human, but from like an elevated part of yourself when you're able to just observe and not be in the chaos, but like just observing the chaos type of thing. Yes, very nice. I love it. This has been so incredible. Like so much information. I'm so excited to share this podcast. and all this information that has come through. Is there anything that I didn't ask you or that you would like to share?
Oh gosh. Just know I'm open. I'm open to all questions. I love sharing about this work. So much of this practice is we're learning as we go.
Yes,
I still every single call we have, we're always seeing a new way that nature works. That's so beyond the way we understand at this point. So yeah, it's always evolving. It's always fascinating. It's always really inspiring. So I appreciate the opportunity to share about it always. So thank you for having me.
you're so welcome. Thank you for sharing all of this information and for what you're doing for the community. Um, where can people find you?
Online. I'm on all the places. So the spelling of my name is really unique. So it's very easy to find me, Kayse Gehret. Our platform is at microdosingforhealing.com. So as I shared earlier, we have a global microdosing community open to 30 countries around the world. And that is a really easy, it's just month to month place where people can pop in to get curious, get education, listen to meet real people doing this practice. We always have a lot of different microdosing guides on the call to help support people. We're happy to offer all of your listeners 15% off ongoing. So anytime you listen to this with the code Valeria15 at
Amazing.
checkout, so people can pop in and get 15% off ongoing on a membership with us. And then beyond that, we have programs, we have a podcast, and we have a professional program for people who, once people experience the medicine and receive a lot of healing and growth, it's super, super common to want to incorporate this into your own life and practice and support your clients and community. So we also have a professional program as well.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. Wow, all the different receptors going in all different pathways.
Indeed. True, true, true.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Casey, for being here. I really have enjoyed this podcast and all of you're just, a book full of information.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
And we'll talk to you sometime again.
Thank you.
Bye.